Good morning and welcome back to the Good Morning Minute podcast. I'm your host, Angelina Mojica, and I'm excited to kick off season 2 with a theme that touches every single one of us: relationships. That's right, friends. Relationships are at the heart of our human experience. They shape who we are, how we grow, and how we show up in the world. Whether it's family, friends, romantic connections, or even the relationships we have with ourselves, each one carries lessons, challenges, and moments of pure joy. This season, we'll sit down with incredible guests who will share their stories, wisdom, and insights on building, nurturing, and even healing relationships. So grab your coffee, settle in, and let's dive into conversations that inspire connection and growth. Now that we've set the stage for today's conversation on relationships, I'm thrilled to introduce our guest. They bring a unique perspective and a wealth of experience to the table, and I know their insights will leave you feeling inspired and equipped to navigate your own relationships with more intention and understanding. So please join me in welcoming Byron and Margaret to the Good Morning Minute podcast. Welcome, Byron. Welcome, Margaret. I am so excited to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yes.
Absolutely. So let's just get to know you before we jump into our conversation. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what drew you to today's conversation about relationships.
Okay. So a few years back, we decided to start a podcast about relationships. There's a lot of negativity that we see surrounding relationships and marriage. And at the time, we had been married for 24 years, and we figured we could offer some positivity and also some insights into how we made it that far. We just celebrated 27 years in December. So we're excited about the podcast, and we've gotten a lot of good feedback. And we've also highlighted other couples who have either had a rocky start or have been together for a long period of time so that they could share those insights also.
Well, I'm excited to get into it. So in your opinion, what's the most important foundation of any healthy relationship?
Friendship.
Okay.
Her and I, we started out as friends before we ventured into a relationship. We were teenagers when we met, and we had about a good 5 years before we actually formed a relationship. But we were friends. We met as teens. She actually had a crush on one of my friends. That's how we met. And we shared that on our first episode. And we talk about, just how we connected, and, we just had that chemistry that never left each other. And when we were around each other, we just felt comfortable being with each other. So we found ourselves just hanging with each other for most of the part, most of the night or whatever. So that's what led us together. And then when we finally got together, we were both at pivotal times in our lives. Just started adulthood, trying to figure things out. And we come together, and, that was 27 years ago, and here we are.
I think that's such a blessing, 27 years ago, because like you said, nowadays relationships aren't in longevity. There's not much of a commitment. And I mean, I speak to myself as well, because I come from 3 failed marriages. And so it is hard work. I think the idea that I grew up in was watching those Disney movies and the happily ever after, right? The ending, they never show you what happens after that wedding. And that was my pre-notion of what a relationship was, is growing up in this like whimsical fantasy world when that is not reality at all. So can you share a defining moment maybe in your lives where there was something that shaped how you viewed relationships? Because what I'm hearing is this started from friendship that just evolved and kept growing into something that's lasted 27 years. So I'm interested in what helped shape that view for you.
So what was pivotal for us, we didn't have the Disney fairy tale start. In December of 1996, I had been living away. I had gone off to school and I was moving back home, and I asked him to help me move. So January of 97, I was moving back. He and I started hanging out. At that point, we had been friends. He had just gotten out of a long-term relationship, and we were still friends. And it grew into something more from there. In July of 97, I found out I was pregnant, and we had to come to terms with things. Are we going to be together, or are we going to co-parent? And we eventually moved in together. We had talked about the idea of getting married, but at the base of everything, I still wanted to have my friend.
Yeah.
And so for us, I think that, and we had the very hard conversation: are we going to move forward as a couple, or are we going to co-parent as friends? Whatever the case, I knew that he would be a wonderful father, and I knew that I wanted my friend. And so throughout our marriage, that friendship is what we go back to. Mm-hmm. I can't imagine not having my best friend in my life. And we often operate as friends more so than the romantic happily ever after type thing. Because in your day-to-day life, it's not the Disney princess type thing that you have. It's the grind of raising kids, and you're working, and there's household chores. And so we always rely on the fact that we're friends, we like each other, and we don't want to lose that. That's
awesome. And what I'm hearing is a foundation of friendship, and at the core of it all, you guys like being in each other's company. When I talk to people about like marriage or, just relationships, they're like, well, you marry because you love somebody. And yes, I mean, there is truth behind that for sure. But love isn't what gets you through those rocky moments. And so can you just kind of talk a little bit about, the concept of truly liking to be in the presence of each other, because that's where you can get together and you can teamwork and
right.
through this marriage. So share some of that insight with me.
Well, when I think about I think about, you think about you went to school and you had friends, you had a group of friends. You may have been 4 or 5, but you had that one that you were drawn to. One that you were like, I'm going to check on them no matter what. I'm going to call them. I'm going to hang out. We're going to go to the mall together. We're going to shop, those types of things like that. So if you take that concept, that's what friendship is. It's that person that you want to be around consistently all the time. And, we take that into friendship into a relationship, which is, I think, if you're married to someone, that should be the most important relationship you have, and so, friendship in that aspect leads to, hey, you got family members that you love, but you don't like being around them all the time,
Yes, I can understand that.
Right. But you have your partner that you like and love, so you should want to be around them all the time, and that makes things easier. It makes those difficult situations, she ticked me off today, but that's still my girl. I like her, I know she had a hard day at work. She was frustrated. I'm gonna let her get all that out and be cool at the end of the day. Now, if you just love someone but don't really like them, well, that dislike can turn into, the frustrations that people tend to go through when they start thinking about breaking up. So, we just tend to think that friendship is key. And, in every aspect of the relationship when it comes to working, when it comes to, the day-to-days, who's going to do the laundry, who's going to do, got to get the grass cut, they got to do all these different things. And at the end of the day, life will come at you. And at the end of the day, it's like we sit down, we talk, we go over those things, we go over our day, she'll get a text, I get a text throughout the day, hey, how's you doing? How's your day? Are you okay? She stresses any frustration or expresses any frustration, then I know, okay, well, I'm gonna have to dial back a little bit today, give her some time to breathe, And if that's important, like her happiness is important to me, and my happiness is important to her. So if that is the case, then we're going to move accordingly to, what's going to be better for the both of us.
We have, if like when you think about your friend, you go and you do things with your friends. So we have some shared interest and hobbies. We both love live music. We love comedy and things like that. But then we have separate interests. And he works on cars. He loves motorcycles. I crochet. I listen to audiobooks. And so with those things, it looks like when we go shopping in our local town, there's a Joann's craft store next to a Harbor Freight. So we take a trip over there. We go into Harbor Freight. We look around for him. We go into Joann's. We look around for me. He is not interested in learning how to crochet at all, but when I make something and I come and show him, he gets excited about, what I've created. When you think about a friendship, that's how you are with your friends. You encourage your friends. He's my biggest cheerleader, but in situations where I may be a little bit quick at the mouth, or I say something or do something that's not right, he'll let me know, you probably could have said it differently. And I take that with love because there's mutual respect. We have our podcast. We've done some DIY projects around the house. So we have those shared hobbies and shared interests also. And we just, like I said, we're friends. We enjoy being in each other's space.
I like that. And I see that friendship just in the expressions of the things that you do together and the interest. But I also see you guys as individuals as well. Like you still know who you are, Margaret. Byron, you still stand in your independence as well, but you come together and you complement each other is what I'm understanding through through this conversation. And so I'm interested because, it's not always roses and rainbows. There are times where life does hit and it hit unexpectedly and it can cause some shifts in things and perspectives and whatnot. So how do you navigate through those complexities, health in a healthy way to maintain that friendship, to maintain 27 years? Yeah.
You just shut up until you can calm down. Just be quiet. That's the best way.
We both of us are, we love words. He writes songs, he writes lyrics, I write poetry. And so sometimes it's not a conversation that we speak, it's a conversation that we text. And that helps us to clear our minds and it helps to remove emotion from things. We had an incident probably around year 10 or so in our marriage where we were going through a lot of changes. We were 22 and 23 when we got married. And we literally got married on 1 week or on the 13th and had our son on the 20th. So we became instant parents and we had a lot of growing and maturing to go through. I had just finished school. I had gotten a degree. I was working. Actually, I had finished my graduate degree. And I said to him one day, this is the first time in my life I'm able to take care of myself. And with youth and the pressures of raising a family, filtering what I said, he took that and is thinking that it was almost like a threat. And he started to pull away. And when he started to pull away, that caused me to pull away. And we both turned outside of our relationship to talk to and communicate with other people.
Mm-hmm.
And what ended up saving us and getting us through that is I don't want to lose my friend.
Yeah.
I don't want to break up my family and what we have started to build because you didn't understand what I meant by the comment that I made, and because I didn't understand your reaction to that. And so when you think about what you have to lose based on a misunderstanding, if you love and want to maintain what you have, then those hard conversations get to be easier.
Yes.
Because the alternative is I lose my friend, I lose my partner, my parent, my children don't have their parents together. So you learn how to sit down and just, okay, we're gonna have to talk about this.
And without argument, arguing, we've learned that it just becomes a battle of wits, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, you want to, when it comes to confrontation, you want to get the best of a person. So that's tends to what happens when couples do argue. It's like, I'm gonna get the best of you. And there comes to bringing up stuff from, you know, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 3 years ago, that you may have not resolved, instead of actually talking about those things. When we talk about how this made me feel, or how that made you feel, and then you can say, okay, well, now that puts things into perspective, because I thought you meant this.
Right.
And oftentimes it is just misunderstanding,
Mm-hmm.
you know, about whatever the situation is. So that's where that fine line and that real communication is not arguing. It's, you know, well, if I have to write a letter to express, because, you know, I'm the silent type. And she's the more expressive type. So oftentimes when we would be in conflict or arguments in our earlier days, she would bring up something, and I'd be like, okay, I got an answer for that. But then she'd bring up something else, and I forgot what my answer was that I was for the first question. You know, she's got 5 questions in, and I'm 3 questions back, and I can't get out what I want to say. So I learned that I had to just write a letter, write it down, you know, just simple as that. And then, okay, this is what I'm feeling. And then she was able to read it, reread it, and then decipher for herself what I meant. And then sometimes it would come back as, well, you said in this, what did this mean? Now I can go back and say, okay, well, what I meant right here is, you know, and that just became a better way of handling that conflict, instead of just, you know, doing this and solving.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm hearing is communication is key. Do you think that being friends for your first 5 years helped with that communication? Because, you know, true friendship, you're going to tell it like it is. Like, I'm going to tell you what I think. But, you know, and those friendships, that are genuine, I mean, you speak the truth. You speak the truth to each other, even if it's the hard truth, you still do that. And you've been practicing for 27 years, so you get to this point where you understand each other's you know, interpretations, and so the approach. How did you fix those approaches into the communication techniques as you started to relationship over the years? What was that like, and how, you know, what kind of methods? I mean, you're using texting, you're using writing and in letters and whatnot. But how did you get to that understanding, like, okay, I need to do it this way, or it's just not going to work out for us, and our communication is just not, it's just going to keep hitting misunderstanding?
So I have a way with words sometimes. and I've had to learn that defense mechanism is not necessary, and that once the words come out, I can't take them back. And so I've had to learn to really be thoughtful in the words that I use, because if I hurt him, there is no unhurting. I can apologize, I can explain, but the words have already come out. So I've had to learn to filter what I say through the meaning and not just the emotion. Like he said, he holds everything in. And so there have been times where I've had to remind him, you holding things in starts to put a wedge between the two of us.
Yeah.
And that's like a wake up call. Okay, I don't want that wedge between the two of us. So I need to express to her what's going on. Or if I can't express exactly what it is, just let her know. Like sometimes it's like I just feel blah, you know,
Yeah.
it's nothing specific. It's just not a good day for me.
Mm.
We've just had to be very intentional about how we handle each other. And I think that's important. I think that the fact that we were friends for so long beforehand does help. But if you work on being friends once you're in the relationship, another thing is making sure we almost treat our relationship like it's a third party. So there's me, there's him, and then there's our relationship. And our relationship has to be healthy. And that means that sometimes I have to back down and think about the health of the relationship. Sometimes he has to step up and think about the health of the relationship.
Yeah.
He's very nice and he wants to do all the things for all the people. And sometimes he has to think about the relationship and how it's going to affect the relationship if he's doing all the things for all the other people and not able to put into the relationship what that's going to do to it and then eventually to me. And so we really focus on making sure the other person is good, making sure the relationship is good, and doing the work for self. I've been in therapy for several years now. He's seen a therapist off and on to deal with things. So just making sure that we're accountable for self and then putting that relationship first.
Yeah. And also, the thing you have to remember is, for I know, far as us are concerned, we both come from two different backgrounds. We were raised different. And when you take two entities that are coming together as one, you have those differences in the way you think, the way you think about discipline, the way you think about, communication, and her upbringing was a little bit more chaotic than mine. So I had to learn that, okay, I have to learn to communicate in a way that doesn't send her off into an offense. So I had to learn, okay, I need to come at her in a more calming manner and not be as in attack mode. And I think, like I said before, when you argue, there's, we want to one up each other. And you have to create that zone where we can just be calm with each other and say, hey, this is how this made me feel. You have to understand that regardless of how you meant it, you can't get upset because they took it the wrong way. You just understand that that's how it felt at that time. And so there lies in another form of correction. So you can look at that conversation and say, okay, well, sometimes you can say the same things and say it 5 different ways. So it's about learning, okay, the right way to say, I didn't like the way you talked to me such and such day. Instead of saying, well, you always put me down. Well, what does that mean? What I'm saying? You always put me down. Well, but give me some specifics, what I'm saying? So I think that, learning to communicate in that manner will help get over some of the hurdles that a lot of couples tend to sometimes go back and forth with. It's like, we'll brush it under the rug, sweep it under the rug, and then we'll come back at it later. And it'll be a different situation, but it'll be the same problem, the same issue.
That's good stuff. And then I also heard you talk a little bit about, self-healing and your own investment in your own self in order to be healthy for the relationship. So go into that just a little bit more. When did that become an awareness of yourself, like of you, when your relationship being, and then you decided, oh, you know what, there's some things that I need to resolve within myself, and I need to do that for the sake of my marriage. What was that moment? What was that aha that hit you that implemented, so for you to implement those strategies?
So I very early in our marriage, there were certain things that stood out that I knew were not quote unquote normal. Um, I was very selective with when I felt comfortable with him kissing me.
Mhm.
I had a real struggle with touch, even from my children. Um, and it was probably when our youngest was maybe 2 or 3. I visibly saw her expression when I kind of moved away from her when she was touching me. And um, later, in me trying to understand why I'm pulling away from my children, I had this rush of memories and realized that I had been molested. And so once the realization came, it helped me understand why I'm not accepting of their touch. And so um, I didn't I didn't seek therapy immediately after that, but I talked to him about what had happened, um, and that helped me start to be more aware and start to heal. And
Mhm.
then eventually, I did start therapy. Like he said, I grew up in a very chaotic home that was oftentimes abusive. Um, and I learned very, very young to be self aware and to be able to read those around me because I never knew what I was walking into. And so I've tried to make use of those skills in a more productive way as I've gotten older.
Mhm.
And through the realization of my childhood and also through therapy, I'm learning how to use those things in a more positive way and not to internalize the feelings and not to feel like I have to use those things for protection. Um, and so with him, when you think about all that I just said,
Mhm.
the grace that he showed by allowing me and accepting those things. You think about your partner turns away when you go to kiss them and what that does to you. Like, what am I doing wrong? And at any point, that could have been the catalyst for him to say, you know what, I don't think I want to deal with this anymore.
Mhm.
But he gave grace and allowed me to go through that process, and I'm thankful for that. And I realized that he didn't have to do that.
Mhm.
um, we realized that he had some things with he lost his father the year before we got married. He had been in a relationship and it was not a very good relationship. And so we realized he had gone through things. So of course, I I was honored to give him the grace to go through those things and to help him work through those things because he had done that for me.
Mhm.
And also, being able to communicate uh, things from her past helped me to understand that, okay, it's not that she's not turning away from me because she doesn't like me or doesn't love me. It's because that touch just irritates her at that time, or a
Mhm.
surprising touch. And that helped me understand that it wasn't me. And there again, that's that communication. And also, when we did talk about those things, she talked about her molestation.
Mhm.
That opened my eyes. I'm like, man, I have something similar happen to me as a child. Well, maybe that's So
Mhm.
just having those conversations, and we realized that some things were the same, and we call it the times. That's what it was at the times. When we were coming up as kids. But those conversations allowed us to be able to say, okay, now this is why she does this, or this is why he does this, and there's no personal offense to take at that moment. But
Mhm.
also, when we seek professional help and you see that your partner is working on those things. I see her improvement. She sees my improvement. Then that gives us to say, okay, well, that's an investment. That's an investment in both of us. So now we know how to handle that conflict, and it becomes, this great big thing to now it's this, teeny tiny minuscule. We may not speak to each other for an hour versus, 4 days go by, and no
Yeah.
communication.
I like that. And I mean, self-awareness plays a huge role when it comes to having a healthy relationship for sure. Emotional intelligence, all those things. And if you know what your triggers are and you're able to communicate, so like communicating those things like this is why I turned away or this is why. But if you want me to receive that, approach me this way. That way I can be available consciously and I'm not reacting out of suppressed memories or whatnot. I totally get it. That's awesome. Oh my gosh, where has the time gone? So
Yep.
let me ask you guys if you could give one piece of advice to someone that may be struggling in their relationship, what would that be?
Think about how it started.
Yep.
Think about even before love entered the picture, when you just liked that person. What are those things that you liked? What are your shared interests? What are those things that you would lose if that person was not in your life?
Yeah, and go back and do some of those things that you did in the beginning. When you coded, or what the old folks say, coding, or dated or whatever. Just go back and do some of those things and revisit that first restaurant you guys sat in, or that first movie. I'm sure, depending on how long you've been married, you can probably find it on YouTube now.
Can stream it.
Exactly.
That's
Go
awesome.
back and do some of those things and revisit some of those moments, and that'll help spark some things, and definitely just clear cut communication. No accusations, no accusing, no name calling. Just communicate. Say, hey, this is what I'm feeling right now. And this is how, what you said on this day made me feel. And you can get by a lot of different conversations versus just the attack, because the attack that's going to cause that conflict that you guys can never resolve, or you can resolve it, but you're going to have to find a better way of resolving that conflict.
That's good advice. So Margaret, Byron, if our listeners wanted to get in touch with you outside of this podcast, where can they find you?
So our website is www.beyondidopodcast.com. And we are on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at the Beyond I Do podcast. And our email is admin at beyondidopodcast.com.
Awesome. Well, everyone, I want to just say thank you so much, Byron and Margaret, for being a guest on our show today. That is a wrap. And you know who I am. I am Angelina Mojica, your life coach, sending you much love, much peace, many blessings.